Hey guys, EDDBUD here, and today I'm back with an initial review of the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro. So the energy rods are finally here in my hands. All I care about with today's review is making sure that Optimus Prime is proud of me. We all know how much the Autobots loved Energon cubes actually, to be precise. So I'm going to try and make sure I put the energy rods to good use here. You can just about see the rods buried here in the Lightstrike Pro foam, like hibernating moles. Anyway, before we get to the review, if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and click the bell below for notifications of when I launch those new videos. So this brand new, barely legal shoe from Adidas, from Germany via Kenya. There's an 8.5mm drop here, obviously an absolutely humongous stack of Lightstrike Pro foam. Adidas say it's 39.5mm. I've measured it in my UK size 11.5 and it's quite considerably more than that. They always quote for size 8.5 US, but there's a lot more here, I'll tell you that for nothing. In my UK size 11.5, we have a 275 gram weight here, which is about 9.7 ounces. I've gone up to an 11.5 in this shoe. I do with all Adidas shoes. I just feel I need a little bit extra length. It's just one of those manufacturers I always need to go up half a size. So Kipruto, amongst other Adidas athletes, have been helping out in the design and testing of this shoe. I did notice some recent very high place finishes in this shoe, but then I did notice also in that race that every single person was wearing this shoe. So I don't know whether it's a Adidas sponsored event or something, but just to let you know. Let's dive into this signal pink piece of Celamesh wonderment, the upper first. I've done two initial runs in this shoe, both of 7 miles each. So that's 11.27 kilometers times 2. One was at 7 minutes 33 per mile average, which is about 4 minutes 41 per kilometer. And the second one slightly faster at 7 minutes 14 per mile average. So that's about 4 minutes 30 per kilometer. Why two runs? Well, back to work and fitting things in around Fergus, sleeping, eating, so on. And attempting to do some cooking as well. The upper first. So almost an identical upper to that used in the Adizero Pro from Adidas. I've checked it out very closely. There appears to be almost no difference between the upper here and on the Adizero Pro. The additional lacing eyelets are present as per the other shoe. The tongue remains the same with those two padded sections right up where you lace the shoe, just to give the top of the foot a little bit of protection there from the knot. I can't see a single difference here at all. I did adjust the lacing to the same configuration that I've got on the Adizero Pro after my first run. I really do think you need a good lockdown with the upper here because the shoe's so rigid. Certainly a tighter lockdown is required with this shoe. I think it was a little loose on the first 7 mile effort that I did. I had to stop and re-tighten the laces, but it still felt a little loose over the top of the forefoot there. My second run was more locked in and I certainly benefited due to that. There's a plastic overlay here in the heel section. I guess some people might complain that there's no specific heel counter here, but this does provide a little bit of rigidity in the heel. Not sure what else to say about this upper. It's certainly very breathable. There's very little to it, though it does provide some really nice structure over the top of the foot. It is the same upper as on the Adizero Pro, and I love that upper. It is fantastic. Now I've got the lacing dialed in, no issues whatsoever, very comfortable. After my initial runs, it's a 3 out of 3 for the upper. Midsole now. So, great upper, but here's where we have some considerable changes and differences between the two shoes. After my initial run, the shoe just felt really, really clunky. First couple of miles, I actually almost considered stopping, going home and putting on my Reebok Energy 2s. I just didn't like the feel of the shoe underfoot at all. After about the second mile, the shoe started to free up a little bit. You could feel the midsole kind of breaking in slightly and it became more enjoyable, and as I lifted up the pace, I started to think it was alright. It felt a little bit less like I was fighting the midsole. That aside, don't expect Next Percent Zoom X or New Balance Fuel Cell type underfoot cushion. If you're looking for that level of squash, then you're in the wrong place. It's a tad firmer ride for certain that some will despise and some will love. Certainly a shoe to get the old jar of Marmite out. It's certainly very high up here, if you're in my size, for sure. I mean, I'm 6'3" and I just felt like some sort of bizarre slender man giant. I gotta say, I found the shoe extremely unstable on anything but a nice flat road surface. It was fine on those type of surfaces, but on anything remotely uneven, I think at times I was more worried about my safety rather than my pace. From that aspect, a vastly different underfoot feel to the Adizero Pro. I find this shoe stable, sure and responsive. The energy rods in the front of the shoe here do nothing at all to improve the stability. Or the part carbon plate in the heel there, I didn't really notice it was there at all. I felt very detached from the road underneath my feet. And at one point it almost felt like the rods in the midfoot here were actually touching the floor. It felt like they were in contact with the floor rather than the outsole. I know that sounds strange, but that was the sensation that I had. I found myself fighting the rocker of the shoe quite a lot. When I first started running in the Asics Meta Racer, it felt a little bit like that, but nowhere near as clunky or sort of dominating, I suppose. Though on my second run, the shoe did feel an awful lot better. Still felt like I was channeling a lot of energy into my running, whereas in some other shoes recently, even heavier shoes like the Tempo Next Percent, it just felt easy. In this it did feel like a real struggle. I just think perhaps it's a midsole configuration that doesn't really work for my running style. I didn't really feel that the plate back here added any real sense of stability to the shoe. Perhaps the rods were a little bit more prominent at higher paces, but I wouldn't suggest in the sense of a Next Percent or Alphafly type feel. The Lightstrike Pro foam is firm but kind of squashy in its own way, far less forgiving than Zoom X from Nike's shoes, perhaps somewhere between Fuel Cell and DNA Flash that you'd find in New Balance and Brooks offerings. It's almost like Adidas aiming this shoe at midfoot strikers, where you've got the incredibly soft heel here, which you almost sink into, and then a very definite midfoot rocker. And I've got to say, at 14 miles into the shoe, you can actually see where the energy rods are. It's really odd. Overall, of the so-called super shoes that I've tested recently, the midsole here lacks the stability of the Endorphin Pro from Saucony, or the Alphafly. I guess I found that a very stable shoe. Those rods make it quite firm and tough and unforgiving in the forefoot. I wouldn't suggest it's similar to the Meta Racer in that sense. I actually like the firmness in that shoe. And of course this has got a much higher stack than the Meta Racer, which is actually legal for some racing on track. A very different feel in this shoe, and one which I'm not totally won over by yet. After my initial runs, I'm going to give this a 1.5 out of 3 for the midsole. Outsole now. Well, it's certainly a different outsole approach. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. The rubber sections here in the forefoot do feel very smooth at first, but actually they're quite textured to the touch. After my initial runs, the traction and grip have actually improved quite considerably. I think the outer layers just got a little bit tarnished, and grip is actually very, very good on road and pavement. I would suggest that road is the chief use that Adidas are aiming this shoe for, and that's easily where it performs the best. On concrete paths or gravel, it's certainly not one I would recommend. There's a lack of outsole protrusions here that would give you any semblance of grip or perhaps traction. It's not going to be the best on those types of surfaces. The rubber's very thin, I have to say. It's wafer thin. I don't know what it is, it's hard to comment on durability at this point, but like I said, you can already see the rods coming through. You can actually press down onto the outsole and feel where the rods are. It's very strange. I can't really see many people using this as a daily trainer. It's certainly one you'd only pull out really for racing, perhaps for longer runs at higher tempos. Obviously Adidas have tried to limit the weight down as much as they possibly can with this new outsole approach. Bizarrely, this shoe is actually the exact same weight as the Adizero Pro in my size. Hard to believe you get all this additional rubber. I mean, there's the Continental section, you've got Quick Strike and Adiwear. 3 types of rubber here, and the traction on pretty much most surfaces is stellar. It is superb in this shoe. It's just a vastly different outsole configuration here. I suggest okay if you're on roads or pavements, not useful in terms of the outsole for much else. That isn't the case for the Adizero Pro. So for the Adizero Adios Pro for outsole, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 3. Value now. Value wise, at least we're on the right side of 200 earth credits. At £169, it's the same as the Adizero Pro. So runners must decide, do they want stability, do they want stack height? What outsole requirements do they have? Either you like the ground floor flat or the tower block condo. It's all in the detail. Maybe the Adizero Pro for a half and the Adizero Adios Pro for the marathon. I think I'd probably just use this. Either way, I would seek out a deal or discount code if this is a shoe that appeals to you. If you can drop it down to about £150, I think that presents much better value for this one. Just a more acceptable number of earth credits. But for me, I think there's very little comparison between these two shoes. This is by far my favourite. A totally different underfoot feel. £169 for a very niche use shoe is a lot of earth credits. I don't feel these offer the best value really. I'm going to give them a 2.2 out of 3 after my initial runs. Yeah, it's a quality item, it's well put together, but I enjoy the more versatile Adizero Pro far more than this tower block. I'll keep on persisting with it though and see what we can get out of it. If I total things up correctly, that gives us an 8.7 out of 12 for the Adizero Adios Pro. So that's about 72% of the marks. It's pretty low. Just hasn't quite hit the mark, this one. Do look out for a video in the very near future where I'm going to directly compare the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro against some of the other super shoes that have been released recently. A musical interlude. In my quest to try to subdue and calm young Fergus, we've been listening to lots of music in the house. I must have put on about 20 albums over the last couple of days. But I was really intrigued to see there was a new album from the Eels coming out very soon. E has released a couple of tracks from that album, which is going to be called Earth to Dora. Are We Alright Again seems to be a song talking about the lockdown, how we're sort of emerging from the lockdown and saying, hey, are we alright now? Who You Say You Are as well was a real return to early Eels material. It sounds like some of the stuff he was producing in the very late 90s, which is no bad thing. I think this one releases towards the end of October. I'm very excited for that. It's been a while since there's been an Eels album and I'm a big fan. So do check these tracks out. I think they've been made available on YouTube and some of the popular streaming services. Right, that's just about all for today. Hope you've enjoyed this video and thanks for watching through to the very end. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and click the bell below for notifications of when new videos are launched. We're nearing 10,000 subscribers, so I've been thinking about doing a special video when we hit 10k. 10k time trial maybe, wearing some ludicrous clothing, perhaps a red, sparkly all-in-one outfit. Seems quite reasonable to me. Help the channel out by giving this video a thumbs up like and also sharing it with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD and I'll be seeing you